Hello everyone, Juxtaposition here. Today's video is going to be regarding West Los Angeles homicides, Santa Monica. We're going to focus on William Holden and Chri Penn. You know, Shannon Penn's younger brother. Shannon Penn, who's Jewish. Yeah, he's Jewish. Lithuanian Jewish. Wanted you to know that I did produce a William Holden video months ago, and it is my world record. I got over 15,000 views within 2 months of posting my William Holden video, which celebrated my favorite William Holden film, amongst many films that I loved. But Love is a Many-Splendored Thing. That's my favorite William Holden film, which I believe was produced in 1955. Okay? And it's more than ironic that Natalie Wood had a 64-foot yacht moored at Marina del Rey, in close proximity to where William Holden resided in Santa Monica, that was named the Splendor. And it was from the Splendor that Natalie Wood was thrown into the ocean at Santa Catalina Island at about 3 o'clock a.m., 3 o'clock in the morning, like a sack of potatoes on November 28th, 1981. That is 33 days from the end of the calendar year. 33 days before the end of 1981, Natalie Wood was drowned. She did not swim, so don't pull the ridiculous, preposterous suggestion that she went swimming at 3 o'clock in the morning on November 28th in winter, when the average temperature is around 52 degrees, and she can't swim. All right. But 2 weeks before that, William Holden was murdered. He was conked in the head by a tire iron or some blunt force instrument that remains unknown. No murder weapon was discovered that we know about. And William Holden's dead body was found in an enormous pool of blood. About 50% of William Holden's blood was all around him in his bedroom on the hardwood floors on November 16th, 1981. Again, this is just 12 days before. This is just, what is this? So it's the 16th. It's 12 days before Natalie Wood's body, with her lungs full of water from breathing all that water in. Natalie Wood was found 12 days after William Holden's body was found. It's crazy. Anyway, that's 1981. William Holden was residing at 535 Ocean Avenue on the 4th floor of a 12-story deluxe apartment building looking out at the Pacific Ocean. He was in unit number 43. 43. And his apartment was meticulous and pristine, and it was decorated with teak from Asia that simulated the set for his epic film, Love is a Many-Splendored Thing. I do recommend you watch that film. It's a tearjerker. It's very romantic. And you should also know that, as my favorite detective show, Peter Falk, who's Jewish but portrays an Italian who's a lieutenant detective for the Robbery Homicide Division of Los Angeles County, the city of Los Angeles. He produced and starred in the film in the television Columbo episode entitled Identity Crisis. That was released on November 2nd, 1975. That is 6 years before William Holden was hit in the head and murdered. In Identity Crisis, a CI operative murders another CI operative by hitting him upside the head with a tire iron. He hit him in his forehead on his top of his scalp. Then when he went down on the ground, he was hit a second time from the rear. And from that, Columbo deduced, using his deductive reasoning skills, that the murderer knew the victim, because there's no way you can just walk up to somebody with a tire iron, wielding a tire iron, and hit them in the head without them fleeing. It's no different than the Sharon Tate crime scene where Abigail Folger and Wojtek Frykowski fled the house and then had to be surrounded by a NATO team in order to put them down. There's no way that you're going to take a hippie or a 21-year-old little girl like Patricia Krenwinkel and chase people around in the darkness with a bayonet, because it was a bayonet, was the murder weapon. So there's no buck knife involved. It's a bayonet. It's not a machete. It's a bayonet. Military. NATO weapon. So what I'm telling you is you can tell by examining the bodies, kind of what happened. I mean, you don't have to be a forensic expert to do that. And of course, when you see that the media and the coroner's office of Los Angeles County comes up with the cause of death immediately, whenever they come up with the same day that the body is collected, that they have a cause of death, like they did in William Holden's case, like they did in the Natalie Wood case. And Thomas Noguchi is the chief medical examiner over there, and he's under a huge amount of pressure to suppress all clandestine military murders are always suppressed. In other words, they come up with cockamamie cause of deaths. Marilyn Monroe, who was murdered 3 miles from where this address for William Holden is. Okay? Nicole Brown Simpson, murdered on North Bundy Drive, off San Vicente Drive, 3 miles from William Holden's site. Okay? And Christopher Shannon Penn, it looks like he was murdered by acute barbiturate toxicity, although technically they say he had morphine, marijuana, codeine, and promethazine in his body. Promethazine is an antihistamine product. That's what they put down on the death certificate. Now, who knows what the truth is? Essentially, they said that Chri Penn, age 40, died from having an enlarged heart. I mean, that's poppycock. It's alleged that he weighed 300 pounds. I don't know if that's true or not. Of course, they said that William Holden was drunk and he fell on his furniture, that he hit the end of a table, he got jammed into the wall, and that he then bled out on the floor, which would take hours to lose half of your blood supply. Anyway, they surmised that William Holden died 4 days earlier, on and around November 12th, 1981. So if you Google the William Holden murder, they'll say it was an accidental death, right? And they'll tell you he died on the 12th of November. They have no idea when he died. They have no idea. His body was found, I believe it was Monday morning at 7 a.m. by his landlord, the building manager of 535 Ocean Avenue. It was the building manager who entered his apartment using the passkey. All the lights were turned off, and the television was on. The television was on in William Holden's meticulous apartment. He had no pajama bottoms. He had a half-on, half-off bathrobe, and he had a 3-inch divot in his scalp. They won't tell me what part of his scalp the divot was. Okay? So I'm not going to say it's the forehead. It's somewhere on his scalp. He had a 3-inch wound, which led to some extreme blood loss, which, that's not going to do an extreme loss of blood where you'd lose half your blood. But anyway, be that as it may, perhaps he was sitting on the floor for 4 days. However, your blood's going to stop pouring out once your heart stops beating. There's not going to be any loss of blood. Then it's going to coagulate pretty quick. So you're not going to have 4 days of blood loss. It's not a Dracula vampire movie, okay? But it is unexplained. It's completely and utterly unexplained by the coroner's office of Los Angeles County. Anyway, like I said, his death occurred at 535 Ocean Avenue on the 4th floor in apartment number 43. That was discovered on November 16th, 1981. The distance to the Santa Monica Pier from William Holden's apartment is 1.5 miles exactly. It was the Santa Monica Pier where the Colombo episode Identity Crisis showed a CIA operative by the name of Nelson Brenner murdering a fake CIA cover name, A.J. Henderson, by hitting him on his scalp with a tire iron underneath the Santa Monica Pier. And that was 6 years before The exact same thing happened to William Holden 6 years before it happened. You should know that the Identity Crisis, starring Peter Falk and Patrick McGowan and Leslie Nielsen, who played the murder victim, they also featured the Enchanted Hillside directly above the Sharon Tate, Abigail Folger murder scene in Benedict Canyon. That was featured. And that was 6 years after Sharon Tate was murdered. In other words, Identity Crisis featuring Bronx Jewish, Hungarian Jewish Peter Falk was released 6 years after the Sharon Tate murder and 6 years before the William Holden murder. Isn't that interesting? Christopher Shannon Penn was found dead in his nice apartment half a mile south of William Holden. The address is 1033 Ocean Avenue. And I told you that it's 1.5 miles to the Santa Monica Pier, and it's half a mile from William Holden to Chri Penn. So that means that Chri Penn is 1 mile exactly from the Santa Monica Pier. Now, Christopher Penn, he died this more or less the same way that Marilyn Monroe died, that Jean Harlow died, that Inger Stevens died, that Connie Monty died, that River Bottom Phoenix died, that Janis Joplin died, that John Belushi died, that Inger Stevens died, that Noreen Kidd Shatner, found at the bottom of William Shatner's swimming pool, the way she died, the way Lindsay Pearlman, which nobody knows who she is, how she died, in close proximity to Janis Joplin's murder site, where Janis Joplin died, where Lenny Bruce died, where Carrie Fisher died, where Debbie Reynolds died. They all died of a spontaneous heart attack, and it's very mysterious. Anyway, that's 12 people who died more or less in a similar way as Christopher Penn did. So that adds up to lucky 13. Anyway, the coroner said that Christopher Penn died from an enlarged heart. Okay, I'm calling poppycock on that. No, he didn't. They said William Holden died by hitting his furniture and conking his head. I'm calling poppycock on that. Then they said he was an alcoholic. Okay, so what did the police report read as far as alcohol in the William Holden apartment? Well, I'll tell you. They found 4 empty bottles of beer in his kitchen sink. All right? And then they found a full bottle of vodka on the kitchen counter. So I'm confused. So if you're saying that William Holden is an alcoholic with cirrhosis of the liver and maybe dying of cancer, how come he has a full bottle of vodka that hasn't been drunk? You know, it seems like the vodka would be, more potent than the beer. And who says he drank the beer? Who says he drank the beer? Maybe the killer opened the beer bottles and poured the beer down the sink, right? After he conked William Holden on the head. And I'm pretty sure that the killer knew William Holden, which is how he gained access to the apartment. Now, this is in the days before we had lots of surveillance cameras and ring cameras like we do today. But in any case, you do know that you can turn those ring cameras off if you're in the clandestine services. Clandestine services can turn surveillance systems to the off position, right? So if you see murders that maybe are billed as suicides, it doesn't necessarily mean that there wasn't a murderer who was captured on video. It's just not available for the media to show you. All right? Because they have that special exemption. They never get caught, they never get arraigned, they never get convicted, and they don't get their face shown on a ring camera. We learned that in the Anne Heche fiery car crash that never happened, didn't we? Yes, we did. Yes, we did. All right, so it's 3 miles to the Nicole Brown crime scene, which happened in what year was that horrible thing happened? 1994, I believe. Is that when we had the Nicole Navy Frogman attack over at 861 Bundy Drive? They've changed the number. It's 861 today. I forget what the address was. when it happened. But that happened in 1994. I think it was June 1994. Anyway, you should know that the CIA was all over that Ron Goldman, Nicole Brown murder trial. At least with respect to the cover-up and the murder trial, CIA has their fingerprints all over that, including William Colby's son, Carl Colby. He testified at the preliminary hearing, and he testified again at the murder trial, as did his CIA wife. Okay, so that's 4 people testifying at the O.J. Simpson proceedings who were associated with the CIA. Then you have F. Lee Bailey, who's a CIA lawyer, who got Ernest Medina off from the My Lai massacre, where everyone agreed. There were over 6 witnesses that testified that Ernest Medina, the highest ranking officer at My Lai, he's a captain, that he personally shot in the face a woman who was hauled out of a ditch and guarded by 2 United States Army men who had searched her. And then Medina said that he thought she was going to throw a hand grenade at him. But she's in custody, and she'd been searched. And he was acquitted of murder. And then they blamed it all on the 5 foot 2.5 inch William Cowley. He did it. It's like Charlie Miles Maddox, 5 foot 2.5 inches. He did it, right? Why is it that they always pick these, little dwarf scapegoats that they did it? There's more. There's other scapegoats that are that short too in CIA stories. I think they're like laughing because they know how stupid the American people are. So they blame it on the least likely person. Then they demonize them. Oh, Charlie Manson's into satanic worship. No, he's not. There's no proof of that. None. That's in your mind. That's your own fantasy of the Wizard of Oz. Anyway, what I'm telling you is that Bill Holden was dating Stephanie Powers, okay, a much younger woman, 28 years younger than William Holden. At the time of his death, Stephanie Powers, not her real name, she's Polish-Jewish, and she went to Hollywood High School and was born in Hollywood. Stephanie Powers was appearing with Robert Wagner in Heart to Heart, a detective television series. You should know that, very important here, that Robert Wagner was age 52 years old, and Stephanie Powers was 39 years old when William Holden, age 63 years old, was murdered by being hit in the head with, I believe, a tire iron. And because that's what Columbo told us in Identity Crisis. The weapon was a tire iron. So I'm going to assume, since Columbo episodes are blueprints for actual murders, that they wouldn't lie about the murder weapon. So I'm going to go with tire iron because that's what Columbo said. And Stephanie Powers began dating William Holden 10 years earlier when she was 29 years old, right? And William Holden was 52 years old. So how many years is the difference there? Okay, so it's 23 years. She's 23 years younger. She's 23 years younger than Bill Holden. And she had some kind of an alibi. She says she talks on the phone with Bill every day, but that she was in Hawaii and she was in the car and she heard it on the radio. We have like 3 different alibi stories for Stephanie Powers, whose real name is Stefania Zaffa Paul Federkiewicz. Federkiewicz. That's Stephanie Powers' Jewish name. Stefana Zafia Paul Federkiewicz. That's Stephanie Powers from Heart to Heart, who's appearing with Robert Wagner at the time that Robert Wagner's wife, age 43, Natalie Wood, gets thrown into the ocean like a sack of potatoes. And this was during, the Thanksgiving break, because normally Stephanie Powers sees Robert Wagner every week. But this was the Thanksgiving week. And she supposedly went to Hawaii, and Robert Wagner on the Splendor with Christopher Walken. Christopher, the strange, mysterious, dancing actor Christopher Walken. He's on the Thanksgiving holiday weekend with Natalie Wood, age 43. Christopher Walken is the same age as Stephanie Powers. He's 39. Robert Wagner is 52. and Natalie gets tossed into the ocean at 3 o'clock in the morning on November 28th, Saturday morning, after a Friday night of late dinner and drinking? I don't think so. So Christopher Walken knows who murdered Natalie Wood, whose real name is Natasha Zakharenko, right? We all learned that her name is, she's Russian. Natasha Zakharenko. Sounds like a KGB name, right? Robert Wagner knows who murdered his wife. He's well aware of it. And you know what? The captain of the Splendor, he knows too. And he got a Screen Actors Guild right after this murder happened. And he moved in to Robert Wagner and Natalie Wood's home in Beverly Hills, which is very close to where Jose Menendez was murdered. He was murdered 8 years later. Remember, in August 1989, Jose and Kitty Menendez were murdered by professionals, not their children, not their sons. Their son, Lyle was a Princeton student. He's going to Princeton. And Eric went to Calabasas High School. And all these articles about how they both grew up in Beverly Hills and were brats. They didn't know anyone in Beverly Hills. Their parents didn't live in Beverly Hills. Their parents lived in Calabasas, where they're building a 10,000 square foot mansion in gated Hidden Hills. Why would they be living in Beverly Hills, in a house where Michael Jackson and Elton John lived before they got murdered? And where Columbo creator, William Link had to move in after they cleaned up the murder scene. Do you see how nutty and crazy this whole thing is? These people don't own these homes. These homes are assigned to them as part of their CIA Hollywood crisis actor contract, because they're all in a cult. And they do what they're told, and it's maritime law. And we follow orders or people die. So clearly, William Holden didn't follow orders. And clearly, Chri Penn didn't follow orders because he got whacked at age 40. And clearly, Natalie Wood didn't follow orders. She got whacked at 43. Now, I want to tell you a little something. I have great admiration for William Holden, who was the best man for Ronald Reagan's second marriage, the one to Nancy Davis, not her real name. Her name is Janice something. Anyway, Nancy Reagan, not Nancy. It was an impromptu wedding. It was a very last-minute wedding. They went from Chasen's in Beverly Hills and called Bill Holden and his wife at the time, Brenda, and then they went up to San Fernando Valley, near Studio City, to the little Valley Church, and they got married. Because it's like a McDonald's. They're open like 24/7. But William Holden was the best man for Ronald Reagan, and he was a good friend of Ronald Reagan. He's younger than Ronald Reagan. So this is the first year of Ronald Reagan's presidency. Ronald Reagan had just had a fake assassination attempt on his life. It was fake because, believe me, if the CIA wanted to kill Ronald Reagan, he'd be dead. But maybe they just wanted to shake him up a little bit with a pneumatic dart, because I understand that he didn't get shot with a bullet. He got shot with a dart. So anyway, you have to realize that I had just met Ronald Reagan before he took the oath of office. He then took the oath of office. Then he gets shot with a dart. Then he goes to the Bethesda Navy Intelligence Hospital where they did the fake autopsy for John F. Kennedy. That's where they took Ronald Reagan. That's where they take everybody, right? They take him in a controlled environment. Then he's coming out of that, and they whacked his best man, William Holden. Now, as much as I admire William Holden, as much as I love his movie Love is a Many Splendored Thing, and Natalie Wood was in Splendor in the Grass with Warren Beatty, and named her yacht the Splendor. As much as I love the splendor and love and romance, I do have to be perfectly frank and let you know that William Holden's true name is William Franklin Beadle Jr., and he grew up across the street from an army base in Illinois, in O'Fallon, Illinois. And his father undoubtedly worked for the military and was an industrial chemist, and I bet he worked for Cal Tech, where Sidney Gottlieb got a PhD, Sidney Gottlieb, head of MK Ultra. And I believe that William Holden's father was sent to Pasadena to work at Caltech. I can't prove that, but that's what I believe, because I don't think you'd move from O'Fallon, Illinois to Pasadena, which is kind of expensive. And then William Franklin Beadle attends Pasadena Junior College, the JC, when he graduates from high school. Then he goes to Pasadena playhouse, and that's where he's discovered by Hollywood. That's where they discover everybody. Colonel Klink was discovered there. Leonard Nimoy, he spent time there. Leonard Nimoy, a Jewish man from Boston, Massachusetts. That is where Sally Fields was discovered. That is a long list of Hollywood film and television actors who presented themselves at the Pasadena Playhouse. And William Holden's name was changed whilst he was transitioning from there to Hollywood film. And anyway, so he became a successful film star in the 50s and 1960s. Then he had several separations with his wife Brenda, of course. So he finds himself in Tuscany, in Florence, Italy, in 1966, and specifically July 2nd, 1966. Now he has two 21-year-old twin sisters in his Ferrari sedan. And he's speeding along a country road outside of Florence with these two young girls. And, he's... I'm trying to think here for a second what the age is. He's 48 years old. He's 48 years old, and he has two 21-year-old twin sisters in the car with him. And his wife's not there. She's not present. Okay, Bill, what's going on? You got two 21-year-old sisters from New York City, but you're in Tuscany, and you're outside of Florence, and you're speeding on a county road. And he comes across an Italian salesman by the name of Lino Giorgio Novell, who's 42 years old, and I guess he's concerned about his next sales appointment. Anyway, William Holden comes up behind him, toots the horn, and waves him to pull over, and Lino, I guess, doesn't pull over quick enough. So instead of passing Lino Novell, on the left like you would normally do, it's dangerous because the roads are narrow, there's not much of a shoulder, and oncoming traffic could come around a blind corner. But what William Holden does, he dives on the inside of Lino, and Lino doesn't see him there, and nor would you expect to have someone passing you on the right on a small, tight county road. Anyway, so Lino turns right, William Holden's there in the Ferrari, and then Lino bounces off, and the trajectory takes him over the guardrail to the left where his car flips, and he dies. He dies at the site, at the crash site. This becomes vehicular manslaughter because now Lino Novell, age 42, he's dead. And William Holden has two 21-year-old twin sisters in the car. And this is very scandalous, right? And he's not divorced yet. He's married, but he's not with his wife. See? This is not splendor. This is not splendid. This is not ideal. Anyway, long story boring, because it's the clandestine services and because Bill Holden is an important social engineer, kind of like Paul Pelosi was an important private banker, and Paul Pelosi flipped his sports car, killing his older brother David. That's a felony manslaughter, but they didn't charge him with felony manslaughter. They didn't charge him with anything. They said a neck brace killed his older brother, not the car crash. Then when Paul Pelosi, again, drunk as fallen down, DUI felony, crashes into Jesus Lopez, age 42, on State Highway 29, a few months ago. And that's a felony manslaughter, or it's a felony DUI, but they knocked it down to a misdemeanor. So when you're in the clandestine services and you're engaged in felonies, they get dropped and you pay a small fine and you do not attend your probation hearings. You blow off your probation officer as much as possible. And that's what William Holden did. He was sentenced to 8 months for vehicular manslaughter, suspended sentence. So he didn't even spend one night in an Italian jail, not one night. And he paid a small fine. I don't know how much the fine was. Small fine. You should know that Tom Perkins of Kleiner Perkins at 2750 Sand Hill Road, he did something similar with his 150-foot yacht. He crashed into a small sailboat off the coast of France, killing the skipper. And then he paid a $10,000 fine and had to apologize And that's the end of that story. And Thomas Perkins was really angry that he had to do that. And he's worth $8 billion when he died. He said he never made $1 billion. He made lots of other people billionaires. Well, anyway, he's not very good at math because he had $8 billion when he died. And he was annoyed of having paying a $10,000 parking ticket for killing another sailboat skipper in the English Channel. True story. So I'm telling you, as these people don't do any time. All right, that's essentially it. But I want to tell you that this story weaves Columbo in Identity Crisis, which telegraphs how William Holden will be murdered 6 years in the future. And they feature the Enchanted Hillside above the Sharon Tate Abigail Folger murder scene, which is a tribute to their deaths by NATO forces 6 years earlier. So they pay tribute to Sharon Tate and NATO in Benedict Canyon 6 years after the fact. And then they tell you, hey, we got another murder planned with Bill Holden in 6 years. Or whoever. Because, I mean, it could be eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Which one of these Hollywood people am I going to whack? Anyway, then Christopher Penn, he got whacked on January 24th, 2006. So if you want to do your math on that, that's 25 years after William Holden. That's 31 years after Sharon Tate. Christopher Shannon Penn killed similarly to Marilyn Monroe, Jean Harlow, Janis Joplin, Inger Stevens, River Bottom Phoenix, Noreen Kidd Shatner, Lenny Bruce, Janis Joplin, John Belushi, Lindsay Pearlman, Debbie Reynolds, Carrie Fisher. You get the picture. All right, thanks for listening. Have a great day. Bye-bye.